What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about some tropical hazards that we're watching for potentially late June and going into July for both the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic. We're going to be covering the East Pacific a little bit first, and then we're going to mainly be talking about conditions that the Atlantic could be seeing going into the next month. It is currently June 21st, and we're starting to see our first indications of what the environment might be going on and being like in the month of July. So let's go ahead and dive right into it right here. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the NHC's latest advisory in the Eastern Pacific. This now has a 0.70% probability of development in the next 7 days, like 0% in the next 48 hours, 70% in the next 7 days. So let's go ahead and read this out real quickly. An area of low pressure is forecast to develop in a couple of days off the coast of Central America. Environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development, after that time, and a tropical depression is likely to form by the middle of next week. This system is forecast to move west-northwest just off the coasts of Central America and southern Mexico. So that's kind of our situation that we have right here, a 0.70% probability. For those of you who may not understand what that means, essentially what the NHC is looking at with this is a 0.70 means that they're pretty confident that something is going to happen, particularly as this is more of a long-term threat. But the fact that the probability is that high, that far out, is something to watch and something to note pretty quickly, predominantly because like a 0.70 is telling me, okay, the NHC is pretty confident that something is going to happen, and we're going to want to take this pretty seriously. So that's kind of what we have going on with the NHC. Moving back to satellite imagery, and we're moving on to the Eastern Pacific just to kind of give you an idea of what we're potentially looking at. So essentially what's going to happen is there's going to be a low pressure system that moves through parts of the Caribbean, crosses into Central America, and then moves into parts of the Eastern Pacific over here. That's what's expected to move through and be the system that ultimately develops. We're going to want to watch that very quickly. I want to see if we can get some surface obs over there just to kind of see which system it is. Okay, taking a look at, yep, this is it right here, looking at Yoshi's website. This is the tropical wave we're paying attention to right here. It's this wave that's going to move through the EPAC and generate some tropical development. So we're going to want to pay very close attention to that, ladies and gentlemen, going forward. And looking at the environment very quickly, taking a quick gander at that. From the looks of it, it looks like it's going to be moving into a pretty moist and very favorable environment for tropical development. You have pretty warm waters. You have like 28 plus degrees Celsius across the whole rim. And then you also have a very moist environment as well as a bit of low wind shear to complement that. It's going to be a situation where this system could potentially intensify at a pretty decent pace, and some models are reflecting on that in the Eastern Pacific. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at them very quickly, the operational runs, starting with the European, then moving on to the GFS and a few others. And here's what we have with the European. The system is expected to move through parts of Central America in the next couple of days. Then it's expected to start slowly organizing and developing off the coast of Central America, strengthens to potentially tropical storm strength by the time it gets to Guatemala and Mexico off the coast of those regions right there. And then it's expected to intensify at a pretty fast rate, potentially down to a 976 millibar system as it hugs the coast of Mexico right there, as it kind of moves parallel to that region. However, as it moves into a drier environment and cooler waters, it'll then start to weaken and then eventually dissipate out to sea. So that's kind of our situation that we have with the European. Taking a look at the GFS very quickly, looking at the 0Z GFS. Similar situation, organizing and developing pretty quickly. It does strengthen up to into the 990s briefly, and then it starts to weaken a little bit and then starts to reorganize and develop. Then it starts to intensify at a pretty quick rate, down to a 978 millibar system as it hugs the coast of Mexico. Some regions, too, could see some more rainfall that were previously affected by Hurricane Eric as well. So you're going to want to take this very seriously for the flood threat in particular. Looking at the Canadian run, similar situation, organizing and developing off the coast of Central America, and then it's moving parallel to the Mexican coast right here. And ultimately, it's going to bring some impacts potentially to the similar regions that were impacted by Hurricane Eric. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. And lastly, taking a quick gander at the Icon run. Icon is generally the weakest out of the runs right there, but it's more so because it's taking its time organizing and all of that. So you're going to want to pay attention to kind of see how this will pan out going forward. But now we can go ahead and shift over towards the Atlantic, and we can talk about some of the conditions that we're going to be seeing in late June and going into July, because I do personally believe that July is going to be a lot better, favorable, a lot more favorable for development than both June and from what we saw last year. So let's go ahead and get started with that right now. And what I have pulled up for you right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the sea surface temperatures for a couple of reasons. Number one, to do our analysis on that. And number two, to kind of check and see, okay, how is the water temps going for right now? So here's the situation that we have with the SSTs. The SSTs across the main development region are already pretty much primed for development. And you're also looking at an increase of water temperatures across some parts of the northern tropical and subtropical Atlantic over here. So that's kind of the situation you're paying attention to. And you have to remember, this area right here really warmed up over the last month or so. And matter of fact, we can do a quick comparison with going to the University of Miami website very quickly. Here's the water temperature. Here's the water temperature that we can kind of show you with that. It's not going to be as robust as what we were seeing previously, but this is what we had on June 1st. And ultimately, we were seeing like 26s, 27s Celsius across a lot of these regions. The warmest water temperatures were actually in the Gulf Stream right here. But as we go ahead and take a look back at it now, look how much that has changed, ladies and gentlemen. We've really warmed up quite a bit, especially in the last couple of weeks right there. Now, granted, a lot of this water is still relatively at the surface. It is starting to dig down a little bit more and more. That's why you're seeing the ocean heat content increase a little bit. But by and large, this is still mainly surface water, and it needs a little bit more time for it to kind of get deeper and deeper down into the ocean. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. But looking at the Gulf, still pretty much piping up, but I have noticed those water temps have decreased quite a bit. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the chart right here. Yeah, they have decreased over the last few days. We can go ahead and move this over. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So this is kind of the situation right here. You are noticing kind of a bit of a stagnation and a bit of a slight decrease in the SST temperatures. That's going to be temporary. Don't expect that to last particularly long. You're going to still see water temperatures continue to increase going forward. And if you want me to prove that, here's the climate reanalyzer for right now, as well as what we're potentially going to be seeing going forward. You're looking at the surge of SSTs through much of May and June, and then you're starting to notice this little bit of stagnation, but then you're going to see those water temperatures continue to increase, and as we get towards August, that's when they are going to peak, and that's when we're going to take it the most seriously. I mean, we're still taking it seriously now, don't get me wrong. It's just that the water temperatures as of right now, they're already pretty much primed for development, but they're expected to get even warmer. So that's the main concern. And another thing I do want to point out is the 2024 SST temperatures have matched what we have right now. What we have right now has matched what we saw previously in terms of like from last year. So we've pretty much met the 2024 SST temperatures, and those were pretty warm. They actually were for a while the warmest on record, on record for parts of August, although 2023's early August SSTs still have not been beaten out, although there is a very real chance that in the Gulf region, that's a pretty big possibility. Now, looking at other areas like the main development region, it's a little bit of a different story. Before, you were looking at near record-breaking SST temperatures last year for much of the year going forward. It was kind of a battle between 2023 and 2024 as to how crazy it was going to get. This year, not so much. It's more towards the average. I would say it's more near the average right now. But still, you're looking at SSTs. You're looking at 26 plus degrees Celsius average SSTs along the main development region, which is this region right here, and that takes into account some of the cooler waters that are currently near the Cabo Verde Islands, as well as in the eastern part of the Atlantic north of the MDR. So it may not seem like much, but it's still a very big concern, especially as you go into July and these SSTs just continue to warm up. The average actually peaked closer to around 28 degrees Celsius, so we still have a long way to go for just kind of how much water temperature water we have to go. And just going for the North Atlantic in general, what you're noticing with that as well is you're noticing it's still pretty above average, and it's just barely over the noise. I believe this is now the third warmest water temperatures across the Atlantic, which encompasses this region on the map, on record right here. It's barely beating out 2021 and 2010 levels right there. So we still have the third warmest SSTs on record right now, behind 2023, which was absolutely insane looking at that, where we cracked, that's how warm we got in 2024, which was not too far behind from it. So looking at all the analogs that we have right now are pretty interesting with the SSTs, and that is expected to continue through much of July, ladies and gentlemen. And water temperatures aren't the main thing I'm going to be paying attention to, even though I've covered them a lot in this video. It's mainly going to be the other conditions like the moist air and the wind shear that we should pay attention to, because based on some model runs, the wind shear does start to decrease quite a bit going into parts of July, and you're going to start seeing more moisture surges that kind of take out more of the Sahara air layer that's in there. So you're going to want to pay attention to those as well, and we'll actually go ahead. Now, we'll actually talk about that in a little bit, but another thing I do want to pay attention to is the ocean heat content, because yes, you're looking at all these water temperatures, but how deep down are those water temps, and how much energy does the ocean have to support tropical development? Well, here's what we have right now. This is as of today, the latest updated one for today. Here's the situation. We're almost maxed out in terms of how high up this map ends up going for the University of Miami right here. We're already cracking 160, 165 OHC in the loop current right here. So that's something you're going to want to pay attention to. And you're also noticing a very big northward surge across much of these regions right here. Very interesting situation we're taking a look at right here. A lot of these, this OHC is moving further and further and further north of the subtropical line, which is at 30 degrees north. What that's going to do is it's going to give hurricanes more time to kind of maintain their strength and potentially pose a greater threat to New England, Canada, the Mid-Atlantic. So that's why you're going to want to take this very, very seriously, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have going on right there. You're also noticing a bit of an increase of OHC in parts of the Eastern Pacific. We can go ahead and compare that to June 1st. What we're looking at right there is in the not the Eastern Pacific, the Eastern Caribbean. I do apologize for that. What you're looking at with over there is you're noticing a bit more concentrated OHC off the coast of Puerto Rico, off the coast of Venezuela as well. You're noticing that's starting to increase quite a bit, but you're also noticing a lot of this OHC is moving further and further and further up to the north right there, which I do think is pretty interesting. That was not a trend I noticed last year. Instead, we were just seeing OHC explosions everywhere. Now we're just noticing, this shifting further and further up to the north. Is it going to move far enough north to get out of the main development region? Absolutely not. No, that's not what's going to happen at all. It's just Atlantic Nina over here that's kind of pushing this OHC and pushing that warm water further up to the north, and you have cooler water temperatures kind of trying to filter in a little bit as well. That's kind of what's causing this bit of a surge up to the north. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. Now let's go ahead and move on to the wind shear, and we'll go ahead and quickly do that very quickly. So we'll do this. And we'll get started. So this is what we have for the wind shear right now. This is the 0Z European. So you're noticing that we're starting to notice more of a trophy pattern as we go into today, and not so much of a kind of a concentrated pattern. That's what you're going to start seeing a lot more of going into the next few days. And then going into July is when you're going to start seeing this the wind shear start going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. That's pretty typical throughout much of it, so we're going to want to pay attention to it, but how that ends up panning out will be very interesting to watch. Noticing, though, the wind shear across parts of the main development region does recede, and it does collapse quite a bit for much of the of late June right there. It does start to increase going into July, but then you're looking at this and you're thinking, how much does the wind shear really increase? Right there, that pocket of low wind shear still is hovering around for quite some time, and then when the rest of the Atlantic shear kicks in, that's when that low wind shear pocket starts to decrease quite a bit. So you're noticing less wind shear, and you're noticing more of a fluctuative pattern going into July. And normally that's something that typically happens throughout the month. I've talked about it quite a bit, but this does seem to be slightly ahead of schedule from what we would want to see. Normally, we wouldn't start seeing these kind of collapses happening until mid-July, and this is now July 5th that I'm showing you. Right here, and these kind of things start happening around June 30th going into July 1st. So you're going to want to pay very close attention to see how that will ultimately pan out going forward. Taking a quick gander at the wind shear anomalies right here, you're noticing lower wind shear across parts of North Africa and parts of the main development region as well. Not going to make too much of a difference early on, but maybe say going into like July 5th, July 6th, July 7th, you're going to want to see how that will ultimately pan out. And in the next few days, we'll get more data to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. Now looking at the moisture component to all of this, you still have a pretty strong Sahara air layer there. It's not, yes, it is a little bit less than what we saw last year. It wasn't like last year where it just kind of choked out development for much of July, but you are noticing quite a bit of a decrease compared to last year, and kind of a decrease compared to what we see on average, just a tiny bit. And you're still noticing more moisture moving into parts of the main development region. You're noticing less dry air and more humidity across parts of the main development region and the Atlantic basin as well. So you're going to want to pay attention to those factors as well. And yes, see, there is a bit more of a Sahara dust pickup right here, but by and large, what you're noticing with this right here is you're noticing a bit of a downtrend from this right here, and you're still going to see potentially a bit of a moisture surge in the next few days. So you have this system moving through right here, and ultimately, you're starting to notice a higher moisture gradient than average across much of Africa right here. You're going to want to pay attention to it. The Sahara dust starts to move in, another dust wave moves in, but after that, you're seeing a bit of a moisture surge across parts of the main development region, and that's part of it is because the Sahel region is starting to increase with its monsoon season. That's also part of it because you're noticing there's going to be a little bit less dust than what we previously saw. So you're going to want to watch these fluctuations. But what's the main point of this? Essentially, what I'm looking at and the conditions I'm looking at are early indications that, okay, things are about to change and things are about to get interesting. We're probably not going to see anything for June, but July, there's going to be probably a few more openings as to what potential development, especially if these patterns continue to persist and continue to get better and better for tropical development going forward. So those are some factors that you're going to want to pay attention to going forward. So ultimately, the main point of this is, yes, we're not looking at tropical development right now, like for the rest of June, most likely, unless something completely unexpected happens, like and something spins up as a subtropical system or not. But ultimately, what I'm noticing from all of this is essentially, July definitely looks better for tropical development. You're noticing also the Azores high is starting to weaken a little bit, and the Bermuda high is starting to take shape a lot more than what I typically would like. That's pretty much ahead of schedule. Normally, you wouldn't see patterns like what we've been seeing with the Bermuda high until August, and we were seeing that in mid-June, ladies and gentlemen. So that's another factor as well. And I think with all the conditions that we're seeing, we're going to have some more openings and I think the season's going to start opening up in the next couple of weeks. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you want to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.